Oh no, it's the hated math section. This restaurant math is really simple. Messes people up on the test. It's the reason some people, if people fail, it's usually the math. Even people that are good at math mess this up, and it's really simple. So your life will be changed if you figure out how to do the restaurant math. So the good news of you doing this by slideshow on the web is you can do it over and over and over, and you got the book. And just make sure you can do these very simple steps. Got some cheating techniques I'm going to give you to how to remember, even if you don't really know what you're doing. Got two numbers, divide the little number by the big number. You got a number and a percent, divide the number by the percent. Pretty simple. So make sure you know how to do these. It'll make all the difference in your world at some point, believe me. Which menu item should servers suggest? The one with the highest price, their personal favorite, or the one with the highest contribution margin? Which one do you think they would be better served by personally for the short term? The one with the highest price, right? Because they're going to get 15 or 17 or 20% tip on that, so they're better off to give you offer you, oh, the $50 one is the best for sure. Their personal favorite. That's not a bad thing. But what works best for you is the highest contribution margin. You would like them to be recommending the one where you make some good money on it. Now, do you go to the staff and say, okay, I make a lot of money on this one, so recommend this one? No, but more subtly, when you sample the staff on your food, which you should, hate going into a restaurant. How's the food here? I don't know. I never ate here. So when you sample them on the things, and just talk about the things, promote the things that you do make a high contribution margin on without having to say that you do. Serving breakfast produces low income because there's only so much you can charge for breakfast. We call that low contribution margin dollars. The percent on pancakes will be high, but the dollars will be low, as an example. So on a steak, you might have a low contribution margin, but you can charge 30 bucks, 40 bucks, 20 bucks anyway for a steak, and you can only charge 3 or 4 or 5 dollars unless you're New Orleans breakfast famous Brennan's, where they can charge $25 for pancakes. But typically, it's there's not a lot of dollars involved, and you can't survive only on percent. You survive on dollars. There's additional operating costs like bringing in staff earlier, turning on the utilities, security. So if you're deciding, should we open up for a breakfast, which we never did before, a lot of concerns involved in that. Typically, what I've always heard, and I believe, is if a restaurant was never open for breakfast and now they start opening for breakfast, they're on their way out of business. They're trying to squeeze every dollar they can, and it's low dollars. So unless you make yourself a well-known breakfast place, you're not gonna. It's not gonna help you. If your concern is good customer service, so you don't want to run out of food, and your forecasts are usually accurate, plus or minus 5%. How many meals should you prepare if you expect 300 guests to come? In this scenario, you don't want to run out because you're saying you're concerned about good customer service. So you would make 300 plus your 5% that you could be off, usually off plus or minus 5%. So you think it's going to be between 285 and 315 based on your guess. So you would make 315 because the question says you're looking at good customer service. You don't want to run out. If, on the other hand, you wanted to be sure to run out, like it's the last day of the month and your budget's hurting and you need to save every penny you can, then you would make 285 portions and just talk those extra 30 people, if they showed up, into something else. Okay, before I start this, let me remind you of two basic rules of restaurant math. One is if you have a number and a percent, you divide the number by the percent. So if the question is includes a number and a percent, you're dividing the number by the percent. If it's two numbers, you're dividing the little number by the big number. Okay, two numbers in the question, you're dividing the little number by the big number. A number and a percent in the question, you're dividing the number by the percent. So, how much do you charge for serving Scotch on the rocks, a 2-ounce serving, if you pay $27.20 for the 1 liter size bottle and you desire a 26% cost factor? Keep in mind there's 33.8 ounces in a liter. The answer is, take your 33.8 ounces divided by 2 ounces per drink, means there's 17 drinks in that bottle, minus 2/10 of an ounce, which somebody's probably not going to miss. Take your $27.20 that you paid for that bottle, divide that by the 26% cost factor that you wish to have, meaning if you sell it for $1, you expect to have 26 cents in cost. That's what 26% cost factor means. So you take your $27.20, that's the cost for you for a bottle, divided by the 26%, means you have to sell that bottle for $104.62. $104.62 divided by the 17 drinks you're going to get out of that bottle means if you charge $6.15 a drink, you will have your 26% food cost. So in Vegas, baby, where they charge $600 for a bottle at the table service places, they would have about a 5% food cost or something like that. That's how you make the big bucks. But if you're looking for 26%, you'd charge $6.15 each. If you're looking for any other percent, you just change the percent, and that'll tell you how much you need to charge. Simple as that. Most of us are aware that with a bottle of wine, the accepted practice is to multiply what you paid for the wine by 2.5. So for a bottle that costs $10, you would charge $25. To determine what your multiplier would be, simply divide 100% by your 32% food cost, which would equal 3.1. So if you wanted a 25% food cost, you would divide 100 by 25, and that would be 4. If you wanted just to make a 10% food cost, you would divide 100 by 10, and that would be a 10. Your cost factor would be 10 to 1. So it's just if you like to multiply better than you like to divide, this is a way of making it a markup multiplier before we were doing division. That makes sense, I hope? Which means if you want a 32% food cost, and the food costs you $5, you would multiply $5 times 3.1. So you would have to charge how much? $15.50 for the meal to have a 32% food cost. This is where the food costs you 5. You have a 3.1 markup multiplier, which would be a 32% food cost, and you would charge $15.50. Simple as that. And here's how you do your labor cost percentages. Determine the labor cost percentage if your revenue was $50,000, your sales were $50,000. Management salaries are $2,500, cook salaries $3,000, secretarial staff salaries $1,500, and your food and beverage cost is $14,000. So you're going to take all of your labor numbers only. Your $2,500 for management, your $3,000 for the cooks, and your $1,500 for the secretaries. Everybody counts. So that's a total of $7,000 in salaries. You don't use the food and beverage cost in this one because you're looking for the labor cost. 7,000 divided by 50,000 equals a 14% labor cost. That means that you spend 14% of the $50,000 revenue on labor. That would be good. Now, what would your food and beverage cost be? In the test, they're going to ask you one question, and then based on the same information, they're going to ask you another question. What would your food and beverage cost percentage be? You're spending 14,000, so 50,000. Sorry, 14,000 divided by 50,000 is going to be 28%. Not rocket science. Make sure you know how to do it both for the test and for life. really simple. There's no math that we're doing that is really higher math. So, wasting money is never good. I know on a personal level, a world's leading expert on wasting money. In business, I tend not to, but at home, I tend to buy stuff I don't need just 'cause I want them. Um, but in business, you don't want to do that because you're only making in the restaurant business a 5% profit on sales, right? 3.5 to 4.5. Bill Marvin suggested or said in his experience. So if you buy something you'll never use, piece of software, something the chef just wants to have, some fancy then carving tool that you never use, and it costs $500. How much do you need in sales to make up for that 5% for that $500? And the answer is $500 divided by 5%. Remember, I said if you have a number and a percent, divide the number by the percent. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you'll get the question right. And the manager who's looking to hire you won't know how you got it, that you didn't really understand it, but you figured it out, and nor will the test. So you have to do $10,000 in sales to make up for the $500 that you wasted. And that is why restaurants go out of business. If a restaurant's starting inventory is $15,800 and 36,000 of inventory is purchased, and there's 18,000 left in inventory at the end of the month, what was the food cost in dollars? So you did an inventory beginning of the month, you had $15,800. You bought $36,000 worth of product, and at the end of the month you still have 18,000 left in the inventory. That's not a food cost then, that's an asset, right, that you can use in the next month. So the answer is $15,800, what you started with, plus the $36,000 that you purchased. So if you didn't use any food, if you were closed for the month, you would have $51,800 in your inventory, right? But you used food. The question is, how much did you use? Well, if you take the 18,000 that's left that you didn't use, the difference is what you did use. So the beginning inventory, 15,800, plus your purchases, 36,000, minus your ending inventory, 18,000, means your food cost dollars were 33,800. How much do you need to charge for the dinner if you budgeted for a 29% food cost percentage? Portion cost of your entree is $2.10. Based on the information provided, what's the minimum price you should charge? What did I say? If you have a number and a percent, you divide the number by the percent. So $2.10 divided by 29% is $7.24, which means if you charge $7.24 and the food cost you $2.10, you have a 29% food cost. 29% of that $7.24 you spent on the food.